Hey there, instructional designers. Welcome to another mini video lecture. This one is going to explore the vocabulary acquisition model, talk about the model, and then share an example of how a teacher might use it. So the vocabulary acquisition model is built on three principles of language. One is that it's a system, so it's not arbitrary and metaphoric. It's fundamentally a tool for communicating about unfamiliar things in terms related to familiar things. So we can think about roots or prefixes or suffixes that we know to figure out words that may be unfamiliar to us. In terms of incidence, vocabulary is naturally and incidentally acquired as a means for expression of understanding. So we pick up vocabulary as we encounter it in the world. And then the third is conceptualization, that teaching vocabulary is a matter of helping learners move simultaneously to greater sophistication in their understanding of concepts and in their understanding of language. So these two things are happening at the same time: deepening understanding of concepts and deepening understanding of language. So the model itself has 5 steps. So it begins with a pretest of knowledge of words critical to whatever content is being studied. And then following that pretest, the teacher elaborates on and discusses with students invented spellings and hypothesized meanings. Together they explore patterns of meaning. There's reading and studying, which may be over periods of days, lessons, a unit. It doesn't all, that reading and studying doesn't all have to happen in a single lesson. And then at the end of whatever that unit of instruction is, the teacher would evaluate and post-test. So let's take an example of what this might look like. So in an earth science class, for example, students need to be able to discuss the physical processes that shape the surface of the earth using content-specific vocabulary. So a teacher might begin with pre-testing knowledge of words critical to the content. Some of those words might be things like geology, geomorphology, geosphere, noticing a pattern, weathering, erosion, tectonic, crust, hydrosphere, Pangea. So the teacher would only do a select, probably not even all of those words, selecting a few to pre-test knowledge of students' spelling and knowledge of how students are thinking about the meanings of those words. So ideally, students would do that ahead of time so that the teacher would have time to look at students' various invented spellings, to be able to share them with the class in a way that doesn't implicate any particular student. So she might take a list of all the different spellings of geomorphology, for example, and put them on a slide or put them on the board and then have students look at that and use that visual, the different representations of the spelling to think about which one looks right. Why or why not would certain spellings maybe be more accurate than others? What are they looking for? What makes a word look right in this case? As well as thinking about meanings. What do these words mean? And in particular, in this set of words, we have a lot of patterns. So then the next step would be to explore the patterns of meaning. So within this group of words, we see a lot that have the root G, which is from the Greek for Gaia or Gaia, who was the goddess who personified the earth. So it makes sense that that root then means earth, and we see it in all of these words related to geology, the study of the earth; geomorphology, the shaping of the earth; the geosphere, the solid ground of the earth that we stand on, which is different from the hydrosphere, which is the water part of our planet. So with students engaging in this kind of unpacking of these words and exploring the different ways in which they are related can help to unpack their meanings. So then the next step would be to read and study. And as I mentioned, this could take place over several days or a whole unit. You might engage in the first 3 steps of the vocabulary acquisition model at the beginning of a unit The rest of the unit is the read and study, and at the conclusion of the unit, you come back around to assess. So I've included here some examples of things that you might include as you read and study. Bill Nye the Science Guy video. If you click on this link in the slides, this image in the slides, it'll take you to a SchoolTube video. Used to be on Netflix. It's been discontinued. I can't believe it. They took Bill Nye the Science Guy off of Netflix. However, it's still available online, and you can see a clip about Pangea, in which Bill talks about plate tectonics, talks about volcanoes, and the ways in which the Earth's crust is developed, the ways in which new rock is added to the surface of the crust. And then in the next video, crash course video on weathering and erosion, this is about how the breakdown happens of once those rocks are made. How are things weathered? How are they broken down? And how are they eroded? How are they moved somewhere else? So both of these videos engage the viewer with the vocabulary as well as images and examples that help further elaborate on the vocabulary. And so at the end of whatever that unit of study is, you would evaluate and post-test to make sure that students have gained a robust understanding of the vocabulary. The authors of our text point out that there are many creative, alternative, and perhaps better ways to assess students' understanding of vocabulary, aside from asking them to spell and define words they have studied. So they give some examples of like identifying synonyms and antonyms for the words they've studied. They actually talk about making up nonsense words with these various prefixes, suffixes, roots, making up nonsense words and seeing if students can decode what those would mean using the patterns that they've explored, doing fill in the blank. So there's a variety of different ways on page 226 in your text that the authors talk about evaluating and post-testing students beyond just a spelling and vocabulary writing out the definition type of quiz. So that's the vocabulary acquisition model, one way that it might be used in a classroom. And how have you experienced vocabulary? What strategies have worked for you? What sorts of patterns do you tend to recognize in words? And how might you use those patterns to help students use their background knowledge, which we know is crucial to the science of learning, use their prior knowledge to be able to think about understanding new and unfamiliar terms? So if you try this out, let me know how it goes. I can't wait to hear about it.